All right, so this is 3A. Okay, and what we're doing today is using percentages for comparison. And altogether, this should be about page 6 for your notes so far. All right, so the third way of using percentages is comparing two amounts. You know, it could be like the tuition at U of A is 20% more than the tuition at ASU. Okay, that's another way of using percentages for comparison. Okay, so this is the third method, number 3. Okay, use percentages for comparing. And then over here we'll have an example. All right, when I'm comparing, let's say that we use an example of two vehicles, a Mercedes and a Lexus. All right, so an example of this would be, let's say, comparing price of a $50,000 Mercedes and a $40,000 Lexus. All right, now if I said, what can you tell me about those prices? Well, it's pretty obvious that the Mercedes costs $10,000 more. All right, so we could say, if we were going to compare these, we could say, well, the cost of a Mercedes is $10,000 more than a Lexus. Okay, so price of Mercedes is $10,000 more than a Lexus. More than. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Or we could say, leave a little bit of space here, because we're going to fill something in after that statement. Or we could say, the Lexus is $10,000 less than. All right, so what we just did was, all we did was just subtract the two amounts. Okay, and when we did that last week, when we were doing percent changes, when you subtracted the two amounts, we called that the absolute change. Well, when we do the $10,000 here, that's called the absolute difference. In this case, we're just subtracting those two values. Okay, so that is called the absolute difference. Difference is the answer to a subtraction problem. All right, now there's another way that we can compare these using fractions or using percentages. All right, so if I was going to describe the price of the Mercedes, its difference, as compared to the Lexus, I could say this. So indent a little here. It says, another way to express this is that the Mercedes price is 25% more than the Lexus. All right, now here's the part that's kind of strange. If I write it down here for the Lexus, watch what happens. The Lexus's price is 20% less than the Mercedes. Notice it's not 25%. So if the Mercedes costs 25% more, well, then how does the Lexus cost 20% less? Shouldn't it be 25%? And it isn't. So that's why, that's something that people don't realize. Okay, Lexus price is 20% less than the Mercedes. Even though the difference between them is still $10,000, when we use percentages to compare them, this one says the price is 25% more, and then the Lexus is only 20% less. Well, how can those two be different when it's 10,000 and 10,000? So that's what we're going to take a look at today. Most people don't understand it when percents are used this way, and they would think that this should be 25% as well. Okay. All right. There's two formulas that we're using. Okay. And they look a lot like what we did on last week. The only difference is we're not dealing with change in price. We're comparing two prices. So we're going to call these two rules. One is going to be called the absolute difference, and the other one is going to be called the relative difference. Okay, so the absolute difference is how we got the $10,000. All right, so our absolute difference is just taking the two values and subtracting them. Absolute difference. Okay, to get the absolute difference, you take the compared value and you subtract the reference value. And I'll talk, how do you know which one is the reference and which one is the compared? Okay, that's the first rule. Okay. The compared value and the reference value are the same as what we did last week, where we had the new value and the starting value. Okay, just like right here, new minus start. Well, since we're comparing two amounts, it doesn't make sense to use a new value and a starting value because they're two different things. Okay, the reference value is what follows the word and, or then, I'm sorry. So this follows the phrase more than or less than. So in our two examples up here, the reference value in the first one is going to be the Lexus because it follows the phrase more than. So this is known as that's known as the reference value. In the bottom one, whatever follows the word less than, the Mercedes, in the bottom one, the Mercedes cost is the reference value. Last week, when we were doing change, we called that the new value, or the starting value, I'm sorry. Okay, so the compared value is the other term. So we're comparing the Mercedes to the Lexus. So the Mercedes in this phrase is the compared value. And in this phrase, the Lexus is the compared value. So if I said, let's see, U of A, the price of U of A's tuition is 20% more than ASU's tuition, then ASU would be the reference value and U of A would be the compared value. All right, the one that is first is the compared value, the one that's second is the reference value. All right, the other formula that we do now is the percentage one. Okay, so this is going to be relative difference or percent difference. So relative difference. Now this works just like the one that we did on Friday. In that this phrase right here becomes the numerator, and then the denominator is the same as the second part of that, of the numerator right there. So it's the exact same setup. So this part is going to be the same as the absolute difference. This is, you're going to take the compared value minus the reference value, and you're going to divide that by the reference value. and then multiply that by 100. So the only thing that's different between last week and what we're doing today is that we're comparing two things, so that we're just using different terminology, but the formulas are the same. The terms are different. Okay, so let's see how these two percentages are calculated. Why is one 25% and the other one only 20%? Okay. All right. So what this would end up looking like, if I gave you one of these two phrases here, okay, so if I said describe how much more is the Mercedes than the Lexus? And then over here, just switch Mercedes and Lexus. Okay, how much more or how much less is the Lexus than the Mercedes? Okay, so if you were given this prompt, and I said, I want you to use percentages to answer this question. So I want you to be able to take something like this, take the information that one is 50 and the other one is 40, and use percentages to describe how these two things compare to each other. Okay. All right. So to do that, you first have to get the absolute difference. Okay. So in order for you to be able to do the relative difference or percentage, you've got to do this first. Okay. All right. So the absolute difference for these, so I'm just going to write ABS difference. All right. So when we're looking at these, whatever follows the word than, all right, the Lexus is the reference and the Mercedes is the compared. Okay. So I'm going to do the compared value, which is 50,000, minus the reference value, which is 40,000, and we obviously get $10,000. And then over on the other one, it's just I just reverse it. The absolute difference in this case, okay, the reference value follows the word than. So this is my reference here. So it's the compared value, which is 40,000, minus the reference value, which is 50,000. You get the same number, it's just negative 10,000. Okay, so this is over here, that's your reference value. So it's compared minus reference. Compared value minus the reference value. Okay, questions up to this point? All right, now what we want to do is, well, how do I change these into percentages? All right, so to get the relative difference, that's the percentage one. So relative difference is the same as percent difference. Okay, so the top of this, the numerator, is what we just did. It's the compared value minus the reference value. Okay, that's that 10,000 right here. I mean, I'll fill in all the numbers, but 1,000. This would be 50,000 minus 40,000, which is the 10,000. But I'm dividing it by the reference value. So the reference value in this case is the Lexus. Okay, so that is 40,000. Remember, in these formulas, these two numbers will always be the same, just like they were last week. Okay, start value in the denominator. They're the same. All right. So if we kept working this out, we'd get 10,000, 40,000. And don't forget, this is times 100. I left that out. Times 100. Right? These would all cancel. So I have 1 divided by 4 times 100. So that's 2.5 times 100, which is 25%. So here, the difference between the two vehicles is 10 grand. And then what you're doing is you're figuring out what percent of 40,000 is 10,000. Well, 10,000 is 25% of 40,000. But over here, when you compare it, you're comparing the $10,000 to the cost of the Mercedes. Here, you're finding the percent that 10,000 is to the cost of the Lexus. All right, so over here, I'd have 40,000 away 50,000 divided by 50,000. And then these are going to cancel, 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 cancel. And I get negative 1 over 5. So negative 1 divided, 1 divided by 5, that's negative 0.2. Ready? Multiply that by 100, and I get negative 20%. So the reason these are different, even though the difference between the two costs is $10,000, this difference is expressing 10,000 as related to the cost of the Lexus, and this one is relating 10,000 to the cost of the Mercedes. See, 10,000 is 20% of 50,000. 10,000 is 25% of 40,000. That's why these two percentages are different. So if somebody, if you were given that, I don't know, let's see, let's see, what's something that you buy? A baseball bat, I guess. Okay. Cost of a bat at Big Five is 25% more than Dick's Sporting Goods. Okay. That doesn't mean that the cost of the bat is 25. This is wrong. If you would say the cost of the bat at Dick's Sporting Goods is 25% less than Big Five. This is incorrect math. And most people don't realize that. Now, let's say that the price was, if I said the cost of a bat at Big Five was $10 more, then saying the cost at Dick's is $10 less, that's okay. This is okay, that's okay. The percentages are not the same. So that's a misunderstanding that most people have on percentages. And it's because you're taking this difference here and you're figuring out what percent it is relative to Dick's Sporting Goods. And in this one, you're finding what percent $10 is to the price at Big Five. So $10 to the price at Big Five, $10 to the price at Dick's Sporting Goods. That's why the percentages are different. Okay. All right. So from these statements right here, that's how we got these statements up here in red. That's where the 25% more came from and the 20% less. All right. So when you get these statements, it's important that you write out what you're comparing. All right. So from this, I can actually say this 3 different ways. Okay. Okay. I can take this info right here. How much time we got? 10:55. Okay. About time. Okay. I can take this 25% and I can say that the price of the Mercedes Mercedes is 25% more than the Lexus. All right, that's one way that I could take and use that 25%. Okay, now another way is this: the Mercedes price, if it's 25% more than the Lexus, then its price is 125% of the Lexus's price. So look, these are different statements, but they mean the same thing. The Mercedes price is 25% more than the Lexus. Notice here's the key word, here's the big difference. This one says more than, and this one says of. But they're saying the same thing. Over here, we could say the Lexus is 20% less than the Mercedes. Or the Lexus price is 80% of the Mercedes price. Those are the same statement. Okay. The way I got this 125% was I took the full price of the Lexus, which is 100%, and I added 25%. Okay, since the Lexus is less than the Mercedes, on this bottom one, this one, the way we got the 80 was we took 100% of the Mercedes price and we subtracted 20%. So when you say the Lexus is 20% less than the Mercedes, you could also say the Lexus is 80% of the Mercedes price. So again, the key words here are less than, of. But these are basically two ways of saying the exact same thing. Okay, guys, we'll stop there for today. What you're going to do is scan this picture or take a picture of it, and you're going to attach it to today's Google post, Google Classroom post. And then this counts towards your classwork grade for today. Okay, and that's it for today, guys. Tomorrow we'll finish up the notes on this, do some practice problems, and then I'll assign the next Math Excel dealing with this. Okay? Questions? Yes.
I finished the